next conversation is going to be led by another leader. We're all about celebrating leaders here at Black Tech Fest today. So I'd love to welcome the incredible Lisa Smith, who's going to lead a conversation in digital empathy, accelerating the connectivity of intersectionality. Please give a round of applause to Lisa Smith.
Thank you. I'll stand on this side. First of all, thank you all for being here. This is a really important topic as it relates to understanding really sort of the impact that Black Tech Fest has had, not only on me individually, but obviously my amazing team who's here, and really sort of other stories that we were able to tell coming out of Black Tech Fest last year. So we're going to talk about digital empathy. It's meant to be a bit of a conversation and a chat, and then I think we have some goodies for you at the end of this. So digital empathy, accelerating connectivity and intersectionality. Today I'm wearing also our Deloitte Proud t-shirt. This is actually created from our LGBTQ network at work. And we don't really sort of talk about the intersection of being Black and queer a lot. And that actually represents a really high demographic in our technology organization. So I wanted you all to understand why I don't have on the classic black t-shirt that everybody else has in the organization today, but we'll continue to talk about that. Thank you for the person who just waved back there in the back. So for the first thing, one thing I want you to really sort of focus on is understanding how the brain is wired. So when I think about digital empathy, there's a couple of things that are happening. First of all, your brain is not wired for structure first. It is actually part of a non-language. So when you're thinking about sort of getting into a technology business and really starting to storytell, how do you start off thinking about the heart first and really what purpose is? If you also think about how we're wired, we're very sort of sensory-driven humans. So we typically create technologies to be an extension of what we actually do naturally. If you think about the camera is actually intended and it's completely designed to reflect exactly how our eyes and the lenses in our eyes perform. So we believe two things. We believe that starting with the heart and then the mind actually accelerates storytelling. And it will accelerate sort of the connectivity of understanding what the intersectionality, particularly as we talk about Black History Month this month, really starting to bring that to life. The other thing that it does is it also starts to actually rapidly accelerate connectivity. So you'll see people on their phone. Right now, there's a lot of people in this room, and their attention is for sale. So who actually at any point in time has sort of the currency to be able to get the attention, that's actually what's going to captivate you. So how might you now use technology to captivate, to be able to tell stories around intersectionality? And we believe that's actually how we bring together our diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda. Second of all, I want to highlight, back to what I mentioned before, sort of the investment from our team. This is not a transactional engagement for us. We are a sponsor for a reason. First of all, I believe as our only Black partner in our business that it's really important to continue to create space for the teams that are around me so that they have the opportunity. This is not about me, this is completely about them. So we're investing in Black Tech Fest because we believe we should be in a community that reflects the people that are in our organization. We do not believe that we've sort of achieved sort of our diversity targets in that aspect, but showing up every year is really important. So I wanted to, before I even go into what digital empathy is, really start to talk about what this means to us and the talent, and actually why we want more people to come work at Deloitte in this space. The second thing is last year, I spoke about digital anthropology. So I'm a digital anthropologist. I do loads of research around the impacts of technology on a certain segment. Last year, my talk was about Black females, tech bias. Why, when we have really, really famous people like you see on the screen, people like Oprah and Serena, Why are they constantly recognized as males in the algorithm? So we did a really big deep dive in Black Tech Fest last year around tech biases and the importance of having representation in end user design, so that actually what needs to be reflected, not only from a gender perspective, but if you think about accessibility, also obviously when you're thinking about race, it is really important to ensure that you have that into your designers. So this year, I'm actually going to talk about how technology is more around the purpose, our purpose ethos. And I want to sort of read this to you because it's a really meaningful statement to us. And I really actually hope it starts to resonate with you differently when you start to think about your career in technology and what that means for you, either as a female, either as someone who's non-binary, either as someone who actually is Black in a new environment. I've met a lot of people at our booth who actually wants to get into technology, but they're having a really hard time getting jobs. So I want you to think about the purpose as I go through this, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time going into a deep dive. There's some cool things I'm going to show you. So making an impact that matters is our duty to society. If I talked about tech bias last year, I sure as hell am going to talk about how that actually we can control some of that. So we believe ethically in our advisory practices, it is important not only to talk to our clients about biases that might be in their platforms and their digital products, but we actually just believe it's a duty in our society that we need to be aware and certainly woke about. The second thing is we're leveraging digital products and services to be able to accelerate that understanding. So what I love about technology is it's your own. You actually have a playground to create. It gives you tons of access that you wouldn't typically have, and you get exponential benefit around understanding vulnerability and being able to storytell. We believe this shows up more in diversity, equity, inclusion. So we tend to, at Deloitte, talk about that in a very three-dimensional manner, but we're adding an exponential E this year. So instead of D, E, and I, we believe it's D, E squared, and I, with the second E being around empathy. So can you actually have diversity? Can you actually have equity? Can you actually have inclusion without having empathy? And we believe the best way to exploit empathy is through the channel of digital. So how are we amplifying underrepresented voices? I'm going to show you a video that we've done. So we've recently, in Deloitte Digital, created the world's first LGBTQ VR museum. It's going national. I'm going to talk about when we're launching that, but we're the first that have done that. And it's from our talent, and we've done it through some joint ventures in the market. So I'm going to talk about sort of how not only is this a really good storytelling that we're doing through this vehicle, but also some other underrepresented voices that we're really sort of representing. Before I go into that video, I just want to remind you of a couple things that I mentioned before. We create technologies to be an extension of our natural abilities. So how might we now use technology to be an extension of your heart and be an extension of your mind the way that we have the eye? If you pay attention to this video, you're going to see some really good examples.
My name is Antonia Forster. I'm the Senior XR Technical Specialist at Unity, and I'm also the Director and Co-developer of the world's first LGBTQ+ virtual reality museum. So when I came out as LGBT to my family, to say it didn't go well would be an understatement. So I couldn't help but feel at the time that if they'd had access to a space like a museum, which is where we really celebrate the culture that we deem appropriate to engage with and preserve, if they'd been in a space like that preserved and centered and celebrated queer stories, that they might have felt differently or at least acted differently. And that if I'd had access to a space like that myself, I might have felt less alone going through that. So I fell line to see, are there any museums in the UK exclusively dedicated to LGBTQ stories? And I found out that there weren't any at all. Other than I don't have the resources to build a physical museum, but I do have the skills to build a virtual reality one. So that's why I built it. One thing we got to do is to make bespoke, customized versions of the museum that center a particular kind of queer story. So for example, we could work with a local council to center stories from the LGBTQ community from one city, or even from one organization. Or it could be for one specific demographic, like queer women, queer BIPOC people, queer people with disabilities and neurodivergence. or it could be around a certain topic. So it'd be asking queer people about mental health or about family or adoption or bodily autonomy or any number of subjects. So that allows us to change our exhibit. And unlike a physical museum, we're really not limited in the number of exhibits we can have. I was really surprised at how emotional the reaction was from a lot of people who experienced the museum. So for example, one person, he really engaged with one of the stories, which is from a friend of mine who is Nigerian. She speaks about being, she's half British, half Nigerian, and she speaks about the intersection of being mixed race and being queer. And he cried from out of it, and he said he'd never seen a queer Nigerian story before in that context, and that was really moving to him. So we really look forward to expanding the museum and helping more people feel seen and acknowledged and centered by it.
So a super amazing example of being able to leverage digital to talk about the intersections of many, many different profiles. If you listen to Antonia, she talks about a lot of things. She talked about workability, which is what we also talk about around accessibility. She talked about gender. She talked about race. She talked about sort of the vulnerability that typically isn't present when you don't sort of have access to that sort of space. But she also talked about the exponential access of being able to exploit that when you're actually working in a geospatial space like a metaverse, where you don't have limits of different sort of like exhibits in there. You can tell many different stories in many different ways. I don't know if anyone paid attention, but there was also a book in there from James Baldwin. And that book, Giovanni's Room, is the first time he came out. And there's a lot right now in social culture around how his books are reemerging. So you can see that there's actually a desire for people sort of crying out to say, how might I be all of who I am, not only at work, but also sort of in society. So a couple other things I wanted to share with you. Back to sort of our purpose and why we're doing this, there's a couple things. We need you to know that we're more than just an accounting firm. There's a lot of discussion this morning that we had with a lot of people. And it's really important to understand when you are in your crafts, we have every craft represented, and you need all of those crafts to come together to really bring what we believe. We make beautiful digital products. We fall in love with problems, not necessarily the solutions, and we use sort of techniques and methods to be able to sort of iterate into some of those solutions. We want you to think about your craft and sort of your career and being able to tell more stories and being able to actually amplify what digital empathy is versus sort of the linear aspect of technology. The other thing too is I hope when you're at something like Black Tech Fest, there's a moment for you. Like there's a moment for you to reflect and say, am I actually getting what I need to be able to be the best in my roles? And am I surrounded around enough sponsorship? Do I have enough support to be able to be successful? So I really hope this is like more of an aspect of inspiring you, not that you got to just come hang out at a cool conference all day and see some cool brands and get some cool swag. But really, is this a moment in your career where you can really start to think about there is purpose when you think about technology? There's a role for you to play that actually you can create your own. And I think if you look at me, that should be a point of inspiration for you. I am certainly a product of social mobility. It is a really popular thing in the US. When you are not wealthy, you get scholarships to go to school. I somehow figured out that if I made really good grades, that I got a lot of recognition from my family and people at school. And all of a sudden, I'm a partner at the biggest and the best of the Big Four, leading brilliant clients and teams, delivering on digital products. And it wasn't really ever my intent. And so I really hope the whole thing, like for us this year in Black History Month, is if you can see it, you can be it. And this is not, I met someone earlier today that said, hey, I applied to Deloitte Digital, but I don't have a big technology background. You don't need that. We need people who are human-centric. We are very experience-led. We need people who understand what impact means. Empathy means that there's some sort of emotion that comes from an experience that you want. And the way that you have compassion around that emotion is really what's at the heart of accelerating technology. So I hope for those of you that might even still be exploring what technology might mean from you, this might be a path to see that you have a brand that really understands how to exploit many different elements of your talent. So a couple things that are next for us. First of all, as I mentioned before, we are going national with our LGBTQ VR museum. We have a lot of people that were a part of that development here, so please stop by our booth and talk to them about how they help bring that digital product to market, particularly as it relates to accelerating digital empathy. Get some donuts. We have loads. We also have some of these tennis balls. I'm going to show you a video here. I'm going to end with another collaboration we did with the LTA as it relates to accelerating the experience of tennis to many different kids. A lot of them were Black that would have never been able to afford to have that experience. And you'll hear some testimonies in the video about how they're now interested in tennis, but it's because they had an experience through a VR experience that we collaborated with LTA. The other thing is, I want you to think about when you walk away today, what's your next step? So you can either leave here and say that that was great and you had a lot of fun and just go back into your roles, or you can really think about what is your role in your technology organizations or in your pursuit of a technology career that you need more of a community around like you have here at Black Tech Fest. And we're certainly more than happy to have you reach out and talk about how we can support you on that. So I'm going to leave you with our video. If you have any other questions, please reach out to us. And then we're going to end on this, and then we'll have a couple of goodies for you.
That was very cool. I haven't seen that before. Yeah, we're very excited.
Yeah! Deloitte and LTA have been working together as part of a long-running partnership. We've been looking at different ways in which to open up tennis to a wider audience, to bring new people into tennis that might not otherwise can be interested in the sport, and to essentially make it accessible to as many people as possible.
Our team is associated with creating rapid prototypes of cool new technology, so we wanted to create something that was fun and exciting, that would create a wow moment, but would also deliver a meaningful message, and that's what we try to do with our experience.
The experience starts with a humble tube of tennis balls. It doesn't look like anything in particular, kind of when you first get handed it. Obviously, having a look at the tube, you realize there's a QR code, so you get your phone out, scan that code, which then activates the experience, and the tube comes to life, essentially.
The tennis balls would open up, and there would be a pro tennis player. In our case, the first one made was Judy Murray. She would pop out of the tennis ball and deliver a message. She talks about why it's so important that people of diverse backgrounds and abilities are able to access tennis. So not only is it a cool technology experience, it's also a little bit of a fun way to bring more people into the game.
I think it's like amazing. It's giving me a nice feeling, like I'm inspired now to play tennis.
We wanted the message to be really personal. The emotion that we were going for when someone uses the experience was surprise and then kind of delight around whatever that particular message was.
We went to the NTC and we had two groups of kids come in to try the experience. They were extremely excited about both the technology aspect of it as well as being invited to the game and also see pro players in action. They really were wowed by the experience and they were also really happy about the surprise at the end. We weren't sure what was possible. We weren't sure how long things were going to take. It was a very iterative process.
It was a combination of things. So it works from a web browser, which has limitations, but also, again, means anyone can pick it up. Getting the tracking to work smoothly. It's tracking off a cylinder, which is a lot more complicated. And then getting the model right, and so it felt believable. It didn't feel wooden.
This project was cool because I think a lot of people were able to try new things that they haven't always been familiar with working with. A big part of the design process, we first worked on 2D design and sketching out those wireframes. The designer on the project was able to start working on stuff like 3D animation, which I think was new for her. And with development as well, we were working on platforms.
So a couple of things in closing. First of all, thank you again to our team that showed up today. I think all of you know, this is probably sort of a bit of a personal moment, but this is for you. This is your community, and this is what I hope you leave the firm in action is committing as relates to investing in our communities that look like you. So please make sure that all of you that are from Deloitte, especially, are leveraging this. Make sure that all of the connections that you've made across our offering portfolios and our service lines continue on after this. For me personally, this is about building legacy. One day, I hope there's another Black partner from Deloitte that's able to stand up on this stage and talk about what they do in our technology field. We do have other Black partners in our firm that are in our other service lines, but we don't have enough yet in our consulting business. So I'll continue to show up and invest in that. And for those of you that I've met today, and many of you that are out in the audience, know a couple things. Know that we are more than a consultant and an accounting firm. Know that the connections you make are yours to have. So be it LinkedIn, be it Twitter, be it the email addresses that you've had, take accountability for how you engage and really sort of take that network back to serve you. Also remember that there's no critics that count in your career. So if no one's really in the arena with you, they really don't have a say-so about how you maneuver. Find people that you feel safe to have those conversations with. Find people that reflect who you are, because they will probably be the ones that can resonate with you most. And really ask for the support and the help that you need so that you can leverage your skills in a way that brings passion to what technology means to you. And lastly, I like to just think about those that we're investing in from a societal perspective. There's a really big digital divide that we still have in our communities. So I'll continue to ask us as a Black community to think about particularly kids that do not have access to technologies. How do we actually accelerate them and their experience faster so that they can see themselves in a world that is actually fully digital? So thank you for your time. I think we're going to pass out some of these things to you today. And good luck with the rest of your experience at Black Tech. Thank you.